Welcome to the Advertising Forum. Today's episode is brought to you by InMobi, and we'll be covering the power of attention metrics in mobile advertising.
In our prior two episodes, we had the pleasure of hosting Philip Golis from Spark Foundry and Sammy Fisher from InMobi. If you haven't tuned into those episodes yet, I highly recommend giving them a listen. Coming up, we're excited to welcome Marc Guldimann, founder of Adelaide, and Richard O'Sullivan, Vice President of Global Revenue and Strategy at InMobi. Marc and Richard, welcome to the Advertising Forum.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, anytime. Thanks for being here. Marc, considering you're the founder of Adelaide, could you start by kind of explaining what attention metrics is and why it's becoming so important in today's mobile space?
Sure. So attention metrics are sort of a broad concept that can be used in many different areas of advertising, everything from creative through audience and media. At Adelaide, and I think specifically for this conversation, we're focused on how to use attention metrics to better understand media quality. And the reason why that's so important is that measurement and verification haven't kept up with the fragmentation of reach. It used to be that sort of like all reach was pretty homogeneous, like TV, radio, and print. It was very consistent. But as digital took over from analog mediums, the nuance and the understanding of the varying qualities of reach haven't been easy to measure. And so the state of the art today is sort of viewability, which treats all impressions that were on screen for more than 1 second as the same. And attention metrics really give advertisers the ability to understand the varying quality of the opportunities they have to reach their audience.
Thank you, Marc. That's really helpful. You guys have had a fantastic 2024 at Adelaide, so hat tip to you. Richard,
Thanks.
I want to kick this one to you. Being at InMobi and being a global leader, as we've discussed right before we started recording, just living in so many different places, how have you seen measurement and attribution actually evolve in mobile advertising? And what role do attention metrics play in this actual evolution in our space?
I think the key thing for us, InMobi's history has always been in the mobile in-app space, and we're currently expanding out of there into omnichannel. But mobile advertising has evolved from a click-based metrics, aggregated at that kind of level. We're moving towards privacy compliant solutions. It's been accelerated by Apple's IDFA changes in recent years. And I think the in-app environments take this further by leveraging first-party data, real-time signals from the SDK, that ties quite nicely into the addressability. So I think for us, the SDK is something that is unique to the mobile in-app world, and the number of unique signals that comes from it can't be replicated by other media so easily like web. I think in the study that we did with Adelaide, there was about 50 million in-app impressions that were measured. And what we saw was that the open web from an in-app perspective was performing above and beyond in the display space. So I think that the important thing for us on attention is, just like viewability upped the level of transparency and measurability about 10 years ago, we're never getting to the end result. We're constantly iterating. We're constantly trying to get more transparent, more accurate. And I think attention definitely does that, moves us down the funnel and increases the accuracy of what we're trying to do.
So how do attention metrics enhance the effectiveness of mobile campaigns for brands, and what does this mean for actual consumer engagement? Let's start with you, Marc.
So I think that the easiest way to explain how attention metrics help brands is just through the lens of outcomes. The purpose of advertising is to drive more business outcomes or more efficient business outcomes. The goal of advertising is not to capture the most attention. It's to figure out how to buy media the most efficiently to show the right message to the right person. So really the best use case for attention metrics is to more efficiently allocate your media spend towards placements that are more likely to drive attention and more likely to drive subsequent outcomes. So in the beginning, it was more about measurement, advertisers understanding what is the varying quality of different placements. Then they were starting to do sort of manual optimization between those placements. Since then, we've moved on to more automated sort of situations in programmatic where people are putting attention metrics into pre-bid. They're using it for curation. In some more advanced situations, they're using it inside of custom algorithms. So there's this broad life cycle that starts with measurement, goes to activation. We're also starting to see very early signs of currency and guarantees where advertisers are starting to hold publishers and media sellers accountable using attention metrics. And then ironically, the last thing that's starting to happen is planning, which typically would come in the beginning of the life cycle. So we're starting to see attention metrics leak into MMM and into various planning tools. So really, the attention metrics can address and can improve every portion of the campaign lifecycle by driving a better and more transparent understanding of media quality.
Marc, you mentioned currencies with attention metrics. Can you get a little bit deeper on that, on how the impact is taking place?
Sure. So there's two ways to drive currencies. There's two ways to create currencies in market. And when I say a currency, I think I'm using the term a little bit liberally because we're not talking about money here. We're talking about the metric that denominates a contract, and sort of use currency as a shorthand for that. So the first way that you would create a currency is via fiat, and that's just a bunch of people in a room who decide that 50% for 1 second is good enough. The second way to drive currency is through arbitrage. And it's not sort of the typical advertising arbitrage where, someone is buying at a low CPM and selling at a higher CPM and arbing the market that way. This is more of buyers having asymmetrical information, using that data to buy things that are underpriced, buy more things that are unpriced and fewer things that are overpriced, thereby helping the market reach equilibrium and helping price be more reflective of actual quality. What happens in those situations is as the information used for arbitrage becomes more diffuse, price starts to approach actual value, and the alpha that's created by a new metric is compressed. And at some point, then the buyer decides that sort of compressed alpha is not worth the effort that they need to undertake to do the arbitrage. And they show up at the sell side and say, "Hey, would you guarantee the quality of the thing that I'm buying using this new metric instead of the old metric?" And then you have a market-driven currency. And that's what we're hoping to see in digital advertising, where buyers are using attention metrics for optimization. And then as that information becomes more diffuse, they start to just show up at a publisher and ask them to guarantee using that metric.
Thank you for explaining that. That was really educational and informational on behalf of the audience. We appreciate it. Richard, I want to get your take on how attention metrics enhance the effectiveness of mobile campaigns for your brand clients or agency clients. Can you get a little deeper on that from where you're sitting at InMobi?
Yeah, I think if we take that through, whenever there's a new innovation in measurement, just again, like there was 10 years ago with viewability, often it comes out to market, and the in-app space, which, as many of us will know, is 70% of all digital media right now, often gets to be the last barrier, if you like, that gets addressed. So I think the key thing for us is, in order to make sure that our advertisers are getting the best performance within the in-app world, hence the partnership with Adelaide, the key thing for us is why in-app comes down to the SDK. And I think this is unique to the mobile space. I think the larger formats, full screen formats, leveraging the SDK's deep signals targets users at optimal moments. And I think ensuring engagement is very helpful in that scenario. So attention optimized campaigns also reduce the media waste and cuts down the emissions. So when you combine attention, not only can you improve the outcomes, as was mentioned earlier, but you can also start to improve your sustainability footprint as well.
So with that, what are some best practices that you would recommend on behalf of InMobi for brands looking to incorporate attention metrics into their actual mobile advertising campaigns?
I think the biggest thing is, aside from those that work from home disproportionately, is that the moment we leave the house where there's a clutter, whether it's signs, whether it's messages, whether it's media, there's a lot of noise out there that requires cut through. And I think this is the difference between, not looking at ads, looking at the viewability, looking at the attention. It's all about increasing that physical, mental kind of space in order to be able to absorb that messaging. So I think for us, especially with the mobile device, it's often referenced that, the first thing you do when you wake up is look at your phone as opposed to your partner. And I think, it's either alarms, it's checking emails, it's any and all things. So the device in and of itself basically probably carries everywhere as much as, if not more than, keys and wallets. So when we look at practices, the biggest thing we're recommending to partners is to focus on premium in-app formats. So things like full screen interstitial, so you get that impact. There's rewarded video, in-game ad formats. Some of these are in 80, 90, 98% viewability in that case, but they're also representative of high attention inventory. So generally, those full screen formats are looking at 30% plus in terms of the Adelaide AU. And this has been something that we've been pioneering with those guys. The second one, I think, is going back to leveraging real-time insights. So where our SDK enables mid-campaign adjustments and, optimizing throughout the campaign rather than just looking at the results post-fact, there is the ability to shift spend to effective placements and improve the lower funnel outcomes that was Olivia mentioned. And I think the third one is also to put greater emphasis on creative. There's always that debate, is it the media placement? Is it the creative? I think the difference now is that catching people, making them not just aware, but engaged, getting them involved in how the brand operates. So I think there is an immersive nature to mobile that allows for context-specific ads in a lean-in environment to start to engage.
Sure.
And I think we've seen that with video. We've seen that with, playables and these kind of environments.
Thanks, Richard. Mark, from where you're sitting, what are the best practices that you're seeing that you're recommending to your brands and agencies that are working across Adelaide and all the different partners in the ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think that the most important step is to measure. Like that is, work with partners that allow you to measure the quality of the media placements where your ads are running. And so I think our partnership with InMobi was one of our first sort of forays into in-app. Was definitely, I think it's definitely been a blind spot historically for attention metrics. So
I agree.
This partnership really is showing that InMobi is leading the charge and driving transparency of in-app inventory. So I think that's super important. And after you've started to understand the quality of the media you're buying, then, there's all of the subsequent steps are pretty obvious. But the other thing I think that advertisers really need to take into account is allowing for the incentives to shift, or not even allowing, but sort of like ushering the incentive shift from cost through value. And sort of as quality becomes more and more transparent, it's easier for the advertiser to hold the market accountable to value instead of just straight cost and straight CPM, which creates a lot of the bad incentives that we face in the market today.
Gentlemen, this has been great. We really appreciate this awesome discussion. Mark, Richard, thank you both. We covered a lot of ground.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of The Power of Attention Metrics in Mobile Advertising. Again, big thank you to InMobi for sponsoring this episode, and a special thanks to Adelaide for joining us today.